Squid Game 2 came out as a late-day Christmas present to all of us from Netflix, and boy oh boy was it a great one. So I'd like to invite you.
To join me in the Squid Games.
Review. I don't have a mask. I mean, it'd be funny if I did.
This is my Squid Game remix opening. I don't want no copyright. Please don't copyright me.
Alright, so if you guys have watched my videos before, some of y'all know the drill, and if you guys are new to the channel, welcome, hi. And, well, spoiler warnings, here we go. Alright, so here's the basic summary of how this season went. Season 2 picks right back up from the final scene of Season 1, where Ki-hoon is about to take the plane to America to see his daughter. Upon seeing the recruiter and receiving a phone call from the front man, he changes his mind to go pursue the game and end it. He spends 2 years looking for them, and eventually does, only to get put through the game again while his allies are trying to find out where the games are being held. He loses all contact and is forced to start a revolution against the game hosts, where he ultimately fails and the season ends on a cliffhanger. Now immediately, what I love about the season is that it already starts off on a darker tone, rather than the silly one that we got in the beginning of Season 1. We already know what the games are like, and what the ultimate punishment is for losing them. Ki-hoon spends 2 years using his now massive fortune to hunt down the game makers. He's already loaded up on guns. I'd also like to preface that guns are super illegal in Korea, like not even police officers regularly carry them. He's used loan shark gangs as scouts, he's hired mercenaries, there's just so much that he's already done to try and find where the games are being hosted. And that didn't even make a huge dent on the money that he's refused to use. His pursuit leads him to a new ally who is Juno, the policeman from Season 1 investigating these games. Now they've already planned many different things to find the game locations and end up splitting off on their own. The plan was to have Ki-hoon come to the games voluntarily so that the other team could track him using a tooth implant. Now obviously this doesn't work, and Juno is led on a goose chase while Ki-hoon tries to help everyone survive in the upcoming games. And it was really interesting for me to see how the writers would integrate someone who's won the games before into a new cast of characters. I knew it would be too boring for them to use the same games cause,
Well, that's just lazy writing.
So what kind of new cultural games would they bring to global audiences while also making the show more serious still? As we have seen from the trailers and the actual show, Ki-hoon tries his hardest to make sure that everyone can stay alive. But everything has changed. The rules, the games, the people. But one thing hasn't changed, which is something that he can never really change: human greed and desperation. What I really liked about this season is that they did a lot more to go in depth about greed and how these characters are affected by it. We have a YouTuber involved in a crypto scam. A trans female, we'll go more into that later. A possible politician, etc. And in my personal opinion, Season 1 really only drove greed as the main factor for people continuing the games. We only see glimpses of desperation here and there, and that's about it. The new rule of being able to vote after every game pushed the whole greed factor to a new level. In fact, the concept of greed's explored even before the games have started. The scene with the recruiter playing God with the homeless people really put a new light on this concept. While we saw only one person taking the bread, the rest of the homeless took the scratch tickets with vain hopes of trying to win the 1 billion won prize. After all their losses, the recruiter destroys the bread in front of the homeless, saying that this was your choice. Now, I wouldn't agree with destroying the bread, that's just fucking cruel. But it did show the effect of greed on people in general. Now if we go to the games, we're told about another new rule. Should the players decide to stop the games early, they'll split the prize money that has already accumulated at that point and be sent back home. After the first game of Red Light Green Light, we saw that each player would be able to go home with about 25 million won, which is equivalent to around $17,000 based on the current exchange rate. Now when you put the word million as a quantity, especially in money, people would assume it's a lot. So to put this into perspective, the average Korean makes about 45.7 million won in a year, which is about 34.2k. So these players would have only made about half the average salary in a day, and that's not bad. But it's also not sustainable if you're not making that every day. And remember, these players are in much more debt than that. While many players thought this wouldn't be enough to live, there were more players who just wanted more money to go beyond their debts and start fresh, while also sacrificing other human lives. And a lot of this greed is also shown when they are trying to actively continue the games. They've already seen people get shot for losing the first game, and so it's now added one's own survival into the mix and walking away with a shitload of money. One example is the mother-son duo. After the second game, the mother tries desperately to convince her son to vote X, but his greed for more money had him momentarily forget about his mother's own safety. While he does care about his mother, I don't think he considered the fact that his mother has a very high chance of dying in each game. There's also the phrase one more, or 한판 더. Throughout this season, there's always been people saying one more game or one last game. This is something that greedy people and people with addictions are usually associated with. One more contract, one more puff, one more slot, and I'll quit or I'll make it big. These characters also believe they have the main character syndrome, which makes them confident they'll make it big and be able to start over. And well, about that, you guys already saw season 1. This also leads me to the desperation factor. As we all know, the participants of every game, except Ki-eun in this season, were those who were in massive amounts of debt, ranging from the hundreds of millions to billions of won, which is in the upper tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands in freedom units. A lot of these people were either conned, addicted to gambling, or just made very poor life choices. There are also some unique cases like Myung-hee, the crypto YouTuber, and Hyunju, the transgender woman. For years, these players are all desperate to live a normal life once more, but can't, since they don't have the money to do so. I mentioned earlier that Hyunju is a case I would delve into deeper, and this is as good a time as any. As you know, Squid Games introduced the world to more of Korea's culture through its games. Through Hyunju, fans all around the world were given more insight into Korea's views on the LGBTQ community. As many people know, the eastern side of the world openly condemns this community. Now, as a Korean and as a fellow human being, I would like to say that I don't agree with these ideas and these views at all. I think they're very old-fashioned and very inhumane at some points. But I would also like to make it clear that I would like to just not delve into this topic any further and just stay on neutral ground so that I don't really say anything controversial or may be seen as controversial. Now that that's out of the way, allow me to continue. Hyunju is a participant who joined the games in order to complete her transition into a woman. She tells us that when she came out as a woman, all of Korea basically abandoned her. She lost her job as an officer in the military, her friends all left her in disgust, her parents no longer contact her. Her life simply just crumbled around her. Now, this isn't too far from the truth in Korean society. It's been known that there are a large number of Koreans still in the closet due to how society views them. Now, while I believe it is less harsh than it was, like, say, back in our parents' time, it's still very harsh today. And this desperation to get her life back, complete her transition, and start anew is what drove her to this game, just like with a large majority of the players. And I mean the desperation, by the way. You see, desperation leads to greed, which then leads to untimely destruction and probably guilt. One last great thing about this show was the frontman's role and his deception. For those of you who've seen season 1, we were given a plot twist where player number 1 was the mastermind behind the games. With season 2, we already know that the new player 1 is this season's main villain. So if we already know this main villain, how would we get a big surprise then? What makes Inho such a great villain was that a lot of his deceptions were based on truth, and the way he plays with Ki-eun's feelings since he has a deep understanding of him. We were given some context about his life before, where he had a sick wife, and where he was fired from his job for quote-unquote accepting a bribe. I'm not sure how much that is true. When he tells Ki-eun this for his reasoning to join the games, it resonates with him, since he also has a daughter of his own. Whether some parts were made up or not, we won't know just yet. The only one who gets a glimpse of Ki-eun's deception was Jung-bae, who is Ki-eun's best friend, when they were playing the Mingle game. While he tries his best to warn Ki-eun about how fishy this guy is, his fear of the man trumps his reasoning. What also makes me more tense about Ki-eun's situation is that he still doesn't know that Inho, who he knows as Yong-il, is the bad guy. After allowing Ki-eun to believe that he had a chance to beat the Game Master, he crushes his own fantasy right in front of him, which I think makes him a really great villain. Now obviously the show is not perfect. I do have slight complaints after all. The main complaint I had about this season was that Juno and his teams looking for the island, like that part of the plot, was either rushed or not given enough spotlight. From the trailers and the first 2 episodes, we believed we would get a good story about finding the island. Instead, we got a lot more focus on the games and maybe snippets of the search progress. I also thought they made it super obvious who was the mole within the team, like this man suddenly finding the police officer and then being so eager to help him even though he probably just met this guy. Like, yeah, no, I don't buy it. I will admit though, at first I thought the mole would be the loan shark goon because he's pretty yappy, but after seeing the fisherman, I kind of just knew. The next thing isn't something I really hated about the show, but I just found it ironic. So, as many Koreaboos and K-pop stans know, Top of Big Bang was one of the players for this season as a rapper who has a drug addiction. I just found this really ironic because he was getting a lot of hate over his weed scandal, and drugs are beyond illegal in Korea. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I just thought that was super ironic. But going back to like actual stuff related to the plot, I also didn't like that they gave little attention to Noler, the North Korean defector who became one of the soldiers of the games. Through her introduction, I thought we would be given some more details about what the game workers were like, but so far, at least for me, they seem like the stereotypical henchmen. Like, some are crazy, some are greedy, but I mean, overall, she just seemed like a plot point that they would try out later, probably in like season 3. So overall, I would say the show actually impressed me, especially given that it's been like 3 years, I think, since the first season came out. And honestly, I didn't really have like huge expectations for the show. And so I will say that I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I'm recording this before New Year's, so this video will come out after the new year has started, but I will just say what a good show actually to end the year off with. And 2025 will bring us the final season of the entirety of the series, and I'm pretty excited to see what the writers have in store for us. Now, I know that the cliffhanger ending of season 2, like even my parents thought it's like a very divisive topic for a lot of the Squid Game fans out there, but honestly, I would say that it was a pretty good way to end the show. So after all this and after all the review and after all this yapping that I just gave to you guys, I would say I will give Squid Games a remarkable 8 out of 10. But yeah, that's pretty much my review for Squid Game Season 2. And if you guys have anything else to say in the comments, make sure to let me know down below. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have a happy new year, and I will see you guys next year. Alright, peace.